All right, let's get started. So, welcome to the second episode of Pleasure is Political, which is your weekly reminder that fascism hates fun, which is what we almost called this podcast.
Runner up.
Awesome. Um, I am Dr. Shan, a professor who studies politics and popular culture.
I am Dr. Kim. I am a coach and I run a pleasure-focused intimacy business called Uncover. And Shannon and I met in our PhD programs.
Yes. And we hereby convene this coven of joyful nerds and activists who want to call in a more just and resilient world. We call it to order. So today we're going to be talking about practical magic and the pleasure and politics of witchcraft and the 1990s.
Uh,
If you have not seen Practical Magic recently, that is okay. We're going to recap it. And we're also going to be sort of using it as a jumping off board to talk about politics and witchcraft and all sorts of other things. So, not necessary to have done the homework in order to enjoy the conversation and participate.
Right. You can still be here, and I'm so excited for you to go watch it once you're done because you're going to love it.
And I just saw this with such different eyes this time around, Kim. I'm sure you did too.
uh,
And I think one of the most fun things about this project so far is I now have started to write down, like, oh, I want to hear Kim talk about this. Oh my gosh, what is Kim talking about?
I know, totally. Yeah. No, same. I'm like, oh, but in this lens, it's like so different. And yeah, I literally was like, oh, I've been waiting my whole life for this conversation.
Me too. I'm like, oh no, I am seeing some formative things that like changed my brain chemistry that I'm now remembering.
Yes.
So, episode business, just really quickly. We're at a new time. Those of you who found us, thank you so much. We'll be recording now weekly on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I think is going to be better for a whole host of different reasons. And yeah, do you have any other business, Kim?
No, that is perfect. Coven business. Yes. Good job.
Excellent. Thank you. So next we have resonances. So, do you want me to start or do you want to start? What's your feeling?
Why don't you start?
Great. So it was really fun to search for resonances around me that tied into this podcast this week. But I saw something actually today that really jumped out that I want to talk about. And it's a quote from an author, Joel Ulier. And they'll tell you that the arts and humanities aren't practical and then read poetry at funerals and weddings, cry over films and search for meaning in ancient philosophy. Surviving is one type of practicality. Knowing why we bother is another.
Oh my God.
I know, right? And it just really, I thought it summarized what the two of us think about so well, right? That we're not machines, that we're always searching for meaning and connection and, often to try to make the world better and ritual and all these different things. And art is essential to our lives, whether we realize it or not. And it shapes so much of how we go about our days and make meaning over the course of our lives and that sort of thing. So that just really jumped out to me.
Oh my God. I should have gone first. Okay, I love that. Like bringing me to tears. That's so beautiful. I'm going to take us a totally different direction. This past weekend, my husband Nick and I were in Kansas City visiting his family, and we have a 14-month-old, which I think I might have mentioned last week. So we spent, as probably any parents in here will know, a ton of time in the car driving around, like trying to get Rosie to sleep or not wanting to wake her up. So we saw, I think, every single Halloween decoration up in the front yard of Kansas City. And it was great. It was fun. We were kind of like turning it into a game. But I was really struck, I think, because I knew we were having this conversation by just how many like dead witch like decorations were like littering these, yards. And like a lot of them are probably the ones like we've all seen of like a witch who's flown into the tree. But there were like just so many versions of that, so many like witches hanging from branches and witches like buried in the yard and like gravestones and like just this kind of just intense anti-witch, like, propaganda, but as just, like, fun, festive, this is just our culture, it's just October, and, frankly, coming from a kind of evangelical background, I know that it's sometimes a little bit, like, deviant just to celebrate Halloween at all, let alone
Right.
be like, like, needing it to be, like, feminist and pro-witch, but it was just really interesting. Like, we have this in our, like, very normative culture and, like, down to, like, the books that I'm reading, Rosie, and the Halloween stuff I'm seeing, and it's all just very, like, these women are evil and they're really better off dead.
Yeah.
Or we are
Uh,
better off with them dead. I know. I'm like, "Oh, let's go back to yours again." But
no, no,
it
no.
really it just shows, like, this juxtaposition is literally why we're here. And to, like, skip ahead a little, but also, like, come rooting into, like, what is happening here, I think that it's really important and interesting and terrifying the more we learn from scholarship, sometimes from our own ancestral, like, lineage, just like what was really going on for most of these women, which was they were midwives, they were mystics, they had cats who killed the rats so they didn't get the plague and then they suspiciously survived, or they were outliving husbands so they were inheriting land that then the church took. And so it's just like, okay, these weren't actually like others in society. They were just women like us, probably a lot like us. And so it just makes it even more important that we're doing this. And even more, I think, on like a DNA level, like a reclamation project that you and I get to spend a Wednesday talking about practical magic and like having it be our job. It's very cool.
Agreed. Um, I would love to use that as a bouncing off point to start talking about gut reactions to practical magic. And those of you who are live with us, if you want to share your gut reactions or what you remember about practical magic in the comments, we would love it. No pressure, but it would be fun if you want to. Um, Before we move to gut reactions, you and I, though, I just want to quickly parking lot the witches that I've been seeing in horror movies. I've been doing a bunch of horror movie marathoning this month. Please remind me after we talk about practical magic to talk about the evolution and my concerns about gender and witches that I'm seeing in recent movies.
Ooh. Okay, will do, and I can't wait for you to teach me that because I will not be watching the horror movies.
I'll watch them for the both of us.
Oh my
Mm,
gosh. Gut reaction this time, especially after like a decade of doing work on basically like what a lot of people in my field call the witch wound of like the
uh,
fear of other women turning on you and the feeling that like I can't trust other women. That's like a huge piece of what kind of has to get undone in my coaching if you're gonna, like, come on a retreat, or, like, join this program. And after just years and years of working on that, my gut reaction was, like, literally sobbing at the end because of the, like, arc around the women. I'm gonna, like,
yeah.
cry again. But,
No.
like, the fact that, like, this time around, I almost, like, didn't even notice the men. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, of course you're, like, there." But the real point is this, like, family lineage healing, and, like, the real point is this, like, town that went from slut shaming and ostracizing these women to, like, being part of the coven and, like, protecting them, like, oh
Yes.
god, it was like, "Oh, this is sisterhood shit in here."
It's so funny because you have touched on so many things that I wrote down
Yeah,
too about the
yeah.
meaning of and I'll, when we talk about the sort of analysis of the movie, one of the big things that I think this movie is saying is sisterhood is true love, right?
Yes,
I
I
mean, eat
agree.
it frozen, right? Sally and Jilly did it first. But and what you said about generational, right? This is a movie not only about generational trauma, but about generational strength,
Yeah.
which is something that I think we don't talk about a lot.
100%. My takeaway in, like, the first round of watching was like, "Oh, one green eye, one blue," or whatever, and it's like, yeah, 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 yeah. These women went from thinking like these 2 needed to be, like, kept away to knowing that they needed to be brought into the community and valued as witches.
Yeah.
I know!
So so obviously, you knowing me very well, you will understand that this brought up a lot of stuff for me. So
Yeah.
for those who haven't known me
For
growing
those who
up,
aren't her best friend.
mm, one of the weirder things about me that is true, that sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not. I have genealogical evidence to prove it. Is that I am related to 3 of the women who were hung in the Salem witch trials.
It's
Also
so
super
fucking
important.
crazy.
What was that?
Sorry, I just said it's so crazy.
It's so weird. Um, so when this gray streak appeared during COVID, when I stopped dyeing my hair, it was like, of course, of course. I've been
It's
waiting my whole
Shan. Yes.
life to have some sort of like magic powers. That,
Yes,
not
right.
that, but the gray
Yes.
streak feels correct. But there are a few things about that, right? So I grew up in Massachusetts. Um, I never felt like I fit in my small town. And I always thought, at the time, I only knew I was related to one Salem witch, descended on my dad's side from Bridget Bishop, who was the first woman who was hung in the Salem witch trials. And she was a very interesting figure because she had a couple of dead ex husbands and she ran a tavern in the town of Salem where she allowed things like shuffleboard to be played, which was like the devil's game. You don't do it. She also had long red curly hair down to her waist. She wore a red bodice. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've kind of been obsessed with her my whole life, right? Thinking about
Yes.
this person. Um, Side note, it is important to note when you are talking about your ancestry that stretches back to the 1600s and you're a white person, right? What we are talking about here are early colonizers too of the United States. And yes, I am related to 3 Salem witches, and I think that's really cool. I am also related to a whole mess of slave traders and horrible people as well. And I do think as a white woman in
Yeah.
2025, it is
Yes.
really important to name that I am doing that I'm trying to avoid doing selective genealogy,
Yeah.
right? To sort of, you know, get the whole picture. But when I was in middle school and high school and didn't fit in and was the weird theater kid, I kind of embraced that. I thought it was really exciting. And kids did sing the Wicked Witch of the West theme song at me in high school. I did have rocks thrown at me while people yelled witch, right? Like
Right. Real.
this was real to me. I but without the powers, which kind of stinks because
Like, at the very least.
it's like, right. But I remember like my bully in middle school on Halloween getting up on a desk when the teacher was out of the room and being like, they're witches. Can't you see what kind of people they are? Like this whole thing, right? So, of course, practical magic in high school wormed itself into
Of
my DNA,
course.
right?
Yes.
And watching Sally walk around on the screen, I was like, oh no, I think there's been some templating that happened there without my
Mm,
realizing it. Um,
mm.
but yeah, so and then I found out later doing ancestry that on my mom's side, Rebecca Nurse and her sister Mary Easty, who were also hung, were also or they're my 12th grade aunts on my mom's side. So and they were landowners and people wanted their land, right? So businesswomen, landowners, these are the type of women that were hung in Salem and have been persecuted throughout history, right? So yeah, I just couldn't help but think about that and just a backlash to feminism in general that we're really seeing right now.
Yeah.
Um, and that maybe the 2000s was this kind of like upward tick before another little dip. And the more things change, the more things stay the same.
God,
So,
it's so
yeah.
true. Oh.
So, those are my big gut reactions.
Yeah, fucking for real. I mean, how could you not have a big reaction? And I think to your point about the political context of watching this again right now and just seeing it play out that it's like not history. It's like the present of just like really worrying that any woman showing too much power, any woman like who's deviating too much from the norm is considered not just I mean, I think this is something that I saw a lot at church and like I'm seeing a lot in that backlash and this kind of resurgence of like a different kind of religious repression in like politics. But it's like you're seen as potentially like a contagion, right? Like,
Yes.
and then not just have your own wayward path, but you're going to maybe infect the other women, which I think is a big reason why like when I left my husband, I wasn't just like in trouble personally. It was like I was kicked out of both Bible studies because it's like you're going to make the other women do the bad thing too. And I feel like that's like a big piece of like why that reaction was so moving for me and, like, why the end, like, it felt so healing, but
Yeah.
also, like, something that I think, yeah, like, we're seeing more and more now, like, it's not isolated.
Yeah. Um, I'll get to the plot description in a minute here just to remind people
Yeah,
who
who
haven't
didn't
seen it
just
in a
watch
while.
it.
But
Yeah.
but since we're talking about gender and power and danger and witchcraft, I want to talk just really briefly about what I am seeing in horror movies right now.
Yeah, I, like, honestly don't know what's gonna come next. Tell me.
So I have been really trying to catch up this month on big horror movies that I missed
Yeah.
over the course of the year. Um, And 3 in particular have really stuck out to me, and I feel like there's more, but these are the 3 that are jumping to mind. So, we watched Longlegs the other night, which is the Nick Cage, horror movie film. That's pretty much what I knew about it. Serial killer, Longlegs, that's what I knew. Earlier this summer, we watched Weapons, and I just reviewed that again. And then, um those are the 2 big ones, but the other one, that centered around witchcraft that we just watched was Bring Her Back.
Mm.
So here's what I'm noticing. Um, there is a long history in horror movies of genderqueer characters being murderers, right?
Mhm.
We can think about Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? With the eye makeup and the lipstick. There's a feeling that there's not a feeling, there's a theory that in slasher movies, violence, particularly sort of penetration with a knife, stands in for sexual dysfunction. Carol Clover, Her Body Himself, great article.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And you can also think about Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, who's making a
Yeah.
woman's suit, right? So there's often a lot of gender panic and trans panic um, in horror movies. One thing that's been really fun to see in the past decade is horror monsters becoming reclaimed as queer icons.
Yeah.
So, did you see the Babadook discourse when that came out?
No, tell me.
Fantastic. So, this movie called The Babadook, which is basically the monster is a cipher for grief in that movie. But it's this creepy white drawing of this guy in this black top hat and black cape that kind of manifests over the course of the movie. And for some reason, people just started embracing him as a queer icon. So there were like people dressed as the Babadook walking in queer pride parades
I
and that kind
love
of thing.
it.
I would say a similar thing happened with The Substance, which
Yes.
is the Demi Moore.
I
There is
caught
a
this because it was like it was horror, but it was also feminist. So I was like,
yes.
okay, yes, yes, coming in here for this.
So without giving away too much, gender becomes monstrous at the end
Uh,
of the movie, and that particular genderqueer character that comes out of hypergendering um, has also become kind of a queer icon, which again, love
so
it.
interesting. Yes.
However, in the three movies I just named, I would say Bring Her Back isn't as genderqueer, but Longlegs and Weapons, this is
Mhm.
light spoilers for both of these, have genderqueer witches who are actually evil.
Mm,
And that is very interesting to me as a cultural studies scholar, because what I am seeing is cultural anxiety about gender boundaries, right? And a sort of demonizing of genderqueer people.
yeah.
What complicates this is in horror movies, especially the two that I just named, there's an element of camp where you also kind of identify with the monster, right? So it's
Yeah.
not that straightforward. But it is so interesting to me that we've had so many movies where witches are cis, straight, almost universally white women, right?
Right. Right.
And now we are moving into this time period where I am seeing this critical mass of genderqueer witches, and I'm
Mm.
fascinated about by it and worried about it.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Completely hear you. And just seeing kind of like, okay, who are we afraid of and why in each moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think if we think of witchcraft as a marker of sort of deviance in these movies, there
Mhm.
is a great, and I mean this in scare quotes and
Mhm.
considering myself part of this, pushing back against oppressive norms, basically, is what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Um, I love a movie where there are thesis statements that are very clear.
Mhm.
And one of the aunts at one point to Sally is sick of being called a witch, and she proclaims that she just wants to be normal. And one of her aunts says, being normal isn't a virtue, it rather denotes a lack of courage,
Yes.
right?
That stood
Um,
out to me too.
yes, of course
Of
it
course.
did,
Of
right?
course.
Yes. And what I'd love to hear you talk about, I mean, I have so many things,
Yeah.
but really quickly plot, and then I'd love to toss
Yeah.
this to you. So, if you haven't seen Practical Magic in a while, 1998, and man, the costumes let you know.
Incredible fashion. Yeah.
Amazing. Practical Magic is about, this is the official description, two witch sisters raised by their eccentric aunts in a small town face closed minded prejudice and a curse which threatens to prevent them from finding lasting love.
Every woman's biggest fear.
Terrifying. Um, and spoiler alert, as Kim and I were kind of saying earlier, like, yes, one of them finds true love maybe a couple of times in the movie.
Yeah.
But at the end, it's really about not just the witch family, but all of the women in the town coming together against this metaphor for patriarchy, basically, for
Literally.
violent patriarchy, um, to kind of banish this patriarchy demon.
Yes. Yes. Literally. It's like an abuse. So back to the plot, an abusive ex, well, like current partner who I feel like it's unclear if they were like actually trying to kill him. Doesn't seem like it, but like they accidentally kill him and then his body is like basically reanimated. So, like, to Shannon's point about it being like the spirit of patriarchy, it's like, no, literally. This is like a domestic violence like perpetrator who we later find out is also like a serial killer, and like part of the whole reason that there's even this, new opportunity with a new love interest is because like this guy was so bad. Like there was
Yeah.
somebody like looking for him in another state. But, then it's like his spirit takes over one of the sisters and tries to kill the other. Yeah, it's like just this kind of like unkillable, it seems, for a while. Evil, like represented in this just like male violence, and the sisters have to kind of like rely on each other and their family and the magic that one of them in particular had really tried to disavow in order to really stand up to the violent, like, patriarchy threatening to kill them.
The fact that Jilly, the sister played by Nicole Kidman, also literally embodies the patriarchy to that,
Right.
like, patriarchy demon comes to live
Yeah.
inside her is also incredible.
I thought that was really interesting too and had totally flown over my head the last time that I watched this. But yeah, that idea, which I do think getting more and more into like why this is so important to talk about now, like, we see everywhere we turn women who it seems like their bodies have been inhabited by the spirit of the evil patriarchy that like cannot be fucking killed. And they're after us. Like when Jilly's body is taken over by this like evil spirit, it's Sally who's in danger. And like, isn't that like just so what we're seeing
Yeah,
politically?
yeah. It's splitting a family apart too, right?
Yes, true. Right, right. Yeah. So, I mean, and then do we need to like say the rest of the plot? So, like, basically, like, the guy who's, I'm forgetting his name. Who's the police? Gary is the police officer. He has like a very generic white man name.
Again,
Uh huh. Yeah. Who we barely
incidental.
noticed. Yeah. 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 So, and then to go back a little bit, like, also to Shannon's point, there are all these scenes of like the girls growing up and like the other women in the town when they're like young making fun of them and teasing them, ostracizing them for being witches. And you get the impression that, this has been like a huge source of grief, right? And so toward the end of the movie, as Gary, we'll call him, who's like the police officer here looking for Jimmy, who's the evil guy who's dead. Um, like he's kind of like asking around. They're trying to figure out like what to do. Aiden Quinn. Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Um,
thank you, Eric. Yes.
yeah.
That's
Uh,
the actor. Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
actor, very handsome. There is just this like, what are we gonna do? How do we kind of get out of this scrape? And it's the other women coming together who help them that make it possible for them to like do the magic that they need to do in order to like keep the spirit dead for real, and like have everybody honestly live happily ever after.
Yeah. Um, it's so funny because that's the exact moment that I was going to ask you about because there's a moment where the sort of head mean girl, right,
Yeah. Yes.
says, "Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to see the inside of your house," right, to Sally when
Right.
she comes in to help. Um, and
Yeah.
there's also Gary.
Scary. Good, that's what I
Yes.
thought.
Amazing. Thank you, Eric, for doing that for us so we didn't have to deal with multiple screens. That was amazing. Appreciate it. Um, and then later on, she gets told there's a little witch in all of us. One of the women is talking about waking up when her daughter had a bad dream and
Yeah.
that she sensed something, right? And it made me think about something you talked about when we were in college, which has really stuck with me, which is looking for your own points of jealousy to know what you desire,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
jealousy is actually desire that's
In disguise.
frustrated Aryan disguise. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that transition from, like, "Oh, it must be nice," to, like, "Oh, it must be, like, nice." I think I want that.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that moment up, and just that feeling of, like, longing that I think is so often just, like, right there underneath, um, so many, like, versions of this, and that permission that then those women get at the end to, like, let that part of them out. I mean, not not to, like, give so much away, but, like, the back to my story, like, some of those girls that kicked me out of Bible study have signed up for my intimacy coaching
Yeah.
program, and it seems similar. It feels kind of like, "Oh, like, permission to be the witch?" Like, how many people at your school just wanted permission to be like you? And, like, maybe they're watching this secretly and getting it now. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not some of your followers.
So the girl that was that seemingly hated me the most in middle school and high school, I was listening to This American Life at one point, an episode about bullies and people talking about what their bullies had gone on to do. So I looked her up,
Yeah.
and now she is like a leader of women in business. She's won all these awards for supporting other women. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about her identity, but I think that she was not able to be who she was growing up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it seems like she is able to be who she is now. And that probably has made a huge difference in her life, right? It also
Yeah.
is just a really good reminder. Like, at first, there was something really weird about that, being like this person who I remember as my tormentor is getting
Fair.
lauded for. But honestly, there is something so soul healing about the idea that people can change and that it is that sometimes, not always, some people are just sociopaths. Um, but there
Another takeaway.
but there are people or serial killers like Jimmy.
Yeah.
But there are people who are really hurting because they haven't been able to find that love. They haven't been able
Yeah.
to let themselves be weird. They are having such a miserable time trying to
Yeah.
fit into a box that isn't for them.
Right. Right. And, I think to make it like a coachy moment all the way, it's like a good reminder that you being fully you is medicine for everybody around you, even if, like, to them it tastes like poison at first. It's like still they needed it, and, like, I think about these sisters and actually, like, the whole line of women all along throughout the history of the town, but
Yeah.
just being like, "You needed us here." And even if, you're choking on it, like, it's, like, medicinal that we're here being who we are and not tamping it down. And I think on, like, a much more individual scale for each of us, it's like, yeah, that is, like, permission for everyone around you to be, like, themselves too.
Yes. I mean, with the caveat, obviously, that I know you embody of being kind and thinking about justice and that kind of thing too. Right, right. But you
Yeah.
don't have to be nice, right? I think
Yeah.
niceness versus kindness is another huge lesson that I think I've
Yeah.
learned since this movie too, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like what I do over here on my side of the fence, not hurting anybody else, is none of your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe also that, like, the currency of being liked and being approved of is actually, like, not that reliable an indicator of, like, everything going well. It makes sense that we are socialized to think we really, really need that. But I feel like part of the message of the movie is like, they were ostracized and they were right. They were the characters who were right. The movie is really wanting us to like identify with the witches who don't fit in and
Yes.
then everyone else needing to come around. And I feel like that's so obvious in the universe of practical magic and it can be like harder to remember in our actual universe for like
Yeah.
ourselves. But I feel like that's one of the things that watching this really underscored and can do and can remind us of like, oh yeah, like you coming back into your magic in like a very literal way in this case is exactly what everybody else is going to need in order to have permission to unleash theirs. Just like hold the line. Like you can't actually give it that temptation Sally has to be like, I just want to be normal. I
Yeah.
feel like we watching that are supposed to think, "Oh my gosh, so understandable," but no,
Yes, of
you
course.
cannot. You cannot.
There's a moment where her daughters get frustrated with her and they say, "You have all of this power and you're not using it."
Yes.
Right? And that is another one of those thesis statement moments where the characters might as well turn to
Yes.
the camera, right?
Yes.
And look at us. And I think especially in this moment when we're thinking about how to translate pleasure
Yes.
into action,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Thinking
yeah.
about what is our gift and how can we use it? And
Yes.
what is our privilege? What is our power? And how can we leverage that
Yes.
to help push us toward a more just, wonderful world for everybody?
I feel like you helped jog my memory that it's like, okay, we've talked, I think, a lot about the power piece, but if we come into the pleasure part, I feel like there's some key pleasure, like tokens in the movie that we're supposed to be thinking about for ourselves. And one is that community element that we've been talking about. It's like, okay, this is like easier to do together. Okay, literally sisterhood. There are these two sisters, and there's like another set of sisters, a lot of sisters. But there's the like bigger piece of sisterhood with like the women in the community and like the pleasure they experience of joining in something bigger than them, having this like basically metaphor for all of their own kind of like processing around patriarchy and relationships that like they now get to do by like helping this one woman. But there's also, it's so clear, just they're having fun. Like
Yeah.
it's fun to do this. It's fun to do it together, whether it's like the midnight margaritas or it's like the coven meeting or like doing all that. I've always wanted to see this. I've always, oh, ooh, ooh, like I get to come. It's clear that the stakes are high. It's clear that it's tense, but it's also clear that it's a fucking party and so fun.
Margaritas, Eric. Yeah, absolutely. That I
Yes.
feel like that midnight margaritas, yeah, and the closing scene where they jump off the roof, right? That
Yes.
midnight margarita scene is the scene that I feel like
Yes.
everybody remembers from this movie, at least
I agree.
um in my estimation. And I think it is so interesting that so many of the problems in this movie come from an inability to balance pleasure and grief.
Yeah.
So the midnight margaritas are amazing, but I had also enjoyed the yeah, totally. The but it gets out of balance at
Right.
the end,
It's
and
like too
because
much.
they've suppressed their grief and because they've
Yeah.
suppressed their anger, all of these things bubble up on the heels of
Yes.
all of this pleasure, right?
Yes.
Whereas we also see moments where there is so much grief. Sally can't get out of bed. Their mother dies of a broken heart, right? That is also seen as not honoring some sort of sacred balance that allows you to move forward.
It's so true, and when you put it that way, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this really was the perfect movie on the heels of Footloose," because the balance between pleasure and grief is such, like, a theme there too, and just that kind of cautionary tale that we're gonna, like, swing so far in another direction to try to, like, overcorrect for a deficiency somewhere, and that both really leave us in this kind of state of, like, insatiability that's, like, destabilized and dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I don't know how I didn't articulate this or think of this before, but for a lot of the movie, Sally and Jilly, yeah, Eric's anticipating what I was gonna say too, right? Sally and Jilly are these poles,
Yeah.
right? Where one kind of is if you think about, like, the humors, or if you think about,
Yes.
Aristotle's, like, notion of virtue ethics, where you're looking for the good
No,
in,
it's so true,
right,
though. Yeah,
between
yeah,
these things.
yeah. Yeah.
Jilly and Sally are different poles.
Right, right,
Um,
and you can even see, like, I think that their relationship to men and to love is, like, supposed to just translate so directly where it's like, okay, one person who's, like, mourning at, like, the love of her life, this one person being gone versus, like, Jilly having this, like, string of love affairs and then ending up accidentally, like, dating a demon.
Whoops. Who among us, Kim?
We all have a Jimmy that just, like, won't die. Yeah, it's so fair to see them as kind of, like, really embodying, like, suppression on the one side and then, like, that hedonism as escapism, which in its own way is, like, a kind of suppression, even if it feels like expression on the other, and that true kind of embodying both alignment, wholeness comes from the sisterhood coming together.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
soundtrack is amazing.
it is. The soundtrack is beautiful. I remembered Lime and the Coconut, and then when I was rewatching it, I was like, I might have to I might have to
Yeah.
go on a streaming platform after this and
Yeah.
listen to the thing full through. So, we've touched on a lot of the things that I think that this movie is trying to tell us, but just to recap, and we can maybe see if there's anything major we missed, but thinking about tools we can use from this movie, right?
Yeah.
Um, the thing that is getting you outcast just might save your life, I think,
Yeah.
is part of that. Um, I wanted to ask your take on this idea at the beginning, right? How the aunts say that they didn't try to hang Maria because she was a witch. They didn't try to hang Maria because she stole other people's husbands, but because she had a gift and they feared that gift, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so good.
And that
So
also makes me
good.
think of a lot of your coaching and what you
Totally.
think about and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's, like, something else that you're definitely like, you've led us to, but that feels like it's about complicating our ideas of, like, what is a good woman and, like, what even is good? Like, what is a good person? Like,
Yeah.
just kind of really scrambling that in some ways, which makes me think of some of what we were saying last week about the lineage of pleasure in theory and in kind of like thinking about resistance, how many writers who were Black feminists and womanists thinking through kind of like we've been given these categories of good and bad or light and dark that are just like not enough. It doesn't even work. It doesn't even make sense. And I think about like Toni Morrison in particular, and this moment in the book Sula when this woman is talking to there's basically kind of like another set of sisters, and one of them is asking the other, like, "How do you know you were the good one? I don't know if you really were. Like, what if it was me?" And she's the one who had done all the bad things that made like the equivalent of this practical magic town mad at her. Stealing other people's husbands is high on the list, but she's like, "I just don't know if following all the rules of this society is actually, like, what makes you good." And I feel like practical magic illustrates that so well because it's like if we followed the rules, like, this guy would still, like, take over, like, we'd all be dead. And
Yeah.
I think that that moment being so powerful for us to watch, especially as women who have seen, girls and then women turn on each other or like not kind of value being bullied or like, seeing like what's happening in politics. It's like, oh, it's not just that it's satisfying to like be right or something. It's also that this is the kind of like complicating of the categories we've been given that feels like it'll allow for like really deeper change. And it starts to seem like that sense of like, you're good, you're bad, you're right, you're wrong is almost like a union busting technique that's gonna keep people from, like, working together to change the system because we're, like, so busy just, like, accusing each other, in this case of being witches, but, like, in general of being, like of being bad, of being wrong, of, like, picking each other apart and fighting, which, like, I don't know, in a way that feels like its own purity culture conversation. Like, if you're bad, if you're getting it wrong in any way, like, you're out. It just seems sort of like, okay, who really benefits from us feeling that way and feeling like these categories are so strict? I don't know. It seems like the movie wants us to think like maybe bad woman is code for like something more complicated that we're actually going to really need.
I think it's interesting. I hadn't thought deeply about this until you brought this idea up, but it's really interesting too that Sally's true love at the end ends up being this detective who
Yeah.
fudges the truth,
Right.
right? About what
Right.
happens because
Yeah.
he sees a difference between the harm Jimmy did
Yes.
and the harm done to Jimmy,
Yes, yes, and
right?
almost like he sees a difference between, like, the ethics and the law, or, like, the morality and the law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're willing to dwell in sort of a gray area where they really think about forgiveness for people who have hurt them in ways that are
Yeah,
symptoms of their own jealousy
right.
versus not allowing people who want to destroy them.
Ooh, that's so good. Right, like, the women of the town are forgiven and invited into the circle. The man who's trying to kill everybody is not just allowed to, like, have free reign. Like, there
Yeah.
are boundaries.
Like, they do actually try to forgive him in a way, right? They kill him
True.
by accident, they bring him back. He immediately sets
Right.
out to murder them again, and they're like, "Oh, never."
Never mind, undo, undo. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a good point. No, you're right, you're right. But that is, like, really fascinating, and I think so helpful to think about in terms of, like, what's happening now, and just if we were to imagine basically, like, a version of the women in this town, and thinking about, like, especially women I'm watching, like, go down this kind of new age to alt-right slippery slope pipeline and thinking like, "Okay, the temptation is to be like, 'Never talk to me again, you can never come back, you can, like, never come see the inside of our house or join our witchy coven circle at the end of the movie,' but what we need is the opposite of that, which is, like, for them to come join us to kill the evil patriarchy once they realize that it's after them too, and I feel
And
like more and more that's happening.
it's after everybody who resists its control in any way, women and men, right? Which
Yeah,
is
even
what I
if you
think that
don't resist its control, it sort of seems like it's after
that's
you
true.
too, like, I'm not sure how you like,
Yeah, no, that's
even
true.
the ones trying to, like, go with it, I'm like, "Oh, it's coming after you too."
I saw a great quote tweet or thread the other day where this woman who was making trad wife content was talking about how happy she was that she was a trad wife so that she could sew and make bread, and it must be miserable to be a feminist and that kind of thing. And there were so many women jumping on there being like, "Hi, I have a career and kids and a husband, and I bake bread and I sew. Do you know why? Because my
Totally.
husband does half the housework."
Right,
Right? We
right,
both we
right.
both get to do things we like and have jobs and take care of the kids, right? And this
Yeah.
idea that that we want to take away a certain
Yeah.
choice.
Or that we wanna
Um,
take away pleasure. Like, you like
right.
sewing and you like baking bread, we're not gonna let you because 'cause we're, like, so angry. Like,
And you like your
opposite.
husband? Great. But we're
Right.
also going to be concerned for you when you think
Right.
that submission to somebody else entirely is the only way you're going to be able to get to do the things you want to do.
I know it.
That's a
I know.
lie, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
to your point, Kim, like people, especially young people, I think are are going to go through growth, and there's going to be the things they know and the things that they're told, and then the things that they discover along the way,
Yeah.
and I do worry about the melodramatic nature of the way that we think about politics sometimes, where it's like if
Right.
you are a thing, you are inherently that thing forever.
That's
And
such a good point.
this isn't to say obviously that if people advocate for racial violence or that they need to be invited back into the fold. There are people that are not safe, and if they're not, disavowing those attitudes and offering to do reparative things, like that's not what we're talking about, right? But often there is this feeling of like there are people who want the best for everybody, and mutual flourishing can be a thing, and that's one of the big lies that I think we're told, and one of the lies that witchcraft narratives often expose.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the equivalent of, like, if the women of the town were trying to come to the coven meeting still throwing rocks at Sally and Jilly, like, no, they're not allowed in. But when it was more like, "Oh, this I see myself in this too." I mean, look, I still think, yeah, ideally people wouldn't be assholes until they realize they personally will also be targeted. That would be like great.
That'd be
But
nice.
I like come from Christianity, so like I know what I'm up against. And it's like, yeah, they as they see like, oh wait, we've been lied to. I think it is really helpful to imagine a version of a future that feels kind of like the ending of this movie where, like, we are coming together to put down for good, like, the evil monster.
Yeah. And to take a leap holding hands, right? They
Yeah,
literally like jump off the roof with their umbrellas, and it's gorgeous and amazing. And I love that last scene. Um, and
so
it's a
good.
leap of faith in a lot of different ways that they take
Yeah,
hand in hand. And I think that that's, again, this movie is deeply intergenerational.
it is.
I
It
remember
absolutely
the
is.
one pair of sisters, but there's three pairs of sisters in this movie. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that's really beautiful. Um,
You know what else? Are we allowed to, like, spoil other movies while we talk about our current movie? Because that ending, especially as we're talking about it now in light of all of this, but, like, honestly, the whole plot feels kind of like it's a retelling and, like, a rewriting of Thelma and Louise, and, like, the end of that movie where, like, there are so many similarities with, like, domestic violence and a cop, and there's, like, a jumping off, holding hands kind of, but it is not the same
yeah.
ending at all.
And one of the people that we went to our PhD program with, who's also a cultural theorist, has a great sort of analysis of the ending of Thelma and Louise as more like magical realism and metaphoric than what would actually happen if you drove a car off a cliff. Um, but you're right, Kim. I hadn't thought about that. But this is this kind of Thelma and Louise moment of,
But, like, redoing it and being like, "In this one, the witches survive."
yeah, yeah, we don't actually have to be punished for not conforming to something that's hurting everybody.
Yes, yes. As Thelma and Louise in their version of this story basically, like, do something kinda similar, but, like, don't win, and,
Right.
like, don't have any choice in that world except to, like, basically, like, plunge into the unknown, but probably to die.
Right.
Here, we've got a story where it's like, in a way, thanks to sisterhood, there was another option, and that jump at the end is, like, actually into, like, a more magical future.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. And it makes
It's
me think we should do Thelma and Louise down the
I
line
agree,
too.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that there are, like, still, of course, so many important things, that that movie is saying. It's just, like, coming at it in a different way.
Totally, yes. The
Yeah.
one quote we hadn't talked about that I was like, "Oh, I love this," is, there's a moment where they're calling somebody a witch, and they're like, "You think after 300 years they'd come up with a better insult?" And
Obsessed.
it's even longer than that, right? But it
So
is really
true.
interesting that this figure of the witch lives in people's imaginations
Yeah.
as a symbol of danger and rebellion and power,
Yes.
um, and how we think about what is proper power and what is improper power. I will not get into it, but I have a very long, um, like, tirade I could go on about figures like Willow, right? Where it's like they
Yeah,
have an
we should get
appropriate
into it maybe next time, but I'm so here for this. Yes, yes.
Um, but having an appropriate amount of power is
Yeah.
fine, little lady, but then if they get too powerful, they get demonic, right?
Then we're bad.
And we're
Yeah,
bad.
it's
Yes.
so true. It's so, so true. And even, like the little bit that I do know about like the feminist threads through horror, it's like, okay, if a woman's body is just being like inhabited, that's one thing. But if she's actually the one acting, like now we've entered like new evil territory. And it's
Right.
so interesting. That has some religious overtones. It's like, I can channel God and the Holy Spirit. It's not me speaking. I'm not preaching. Like that
Right.
has its own really interesting, especially in American history, like tradition.
And woman as vessel too,
Yeah,
right? In those
exactly.
moments. Yeah.
Exactly. And almost like, oh, who me? Like, oh, it wasn't me.
Little me, no way. All right. So, Kim, to close this out, what helped you stay awake, connected, and in the fight this week?
Mm. Okay, well, honestly, not to be so meta, but knowing we were doing this, like yeah, exactly right in the
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
But knowing we were doing this and like having it just be such a literal embodiment of like what our philosophy is that like you can plug into it can be fun, you can plug into like something entertaining, something pleasurable, but extract from it like the energy to keep going and keep fighting and keep thinking about these things more deeply. Like when I was tempted to like doom scroll and check out, I like thought about this conversation and checked back in and it felt just like exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. This feels like praxis in a lot of ways.
That feels practical magic in, like, literal
There you
ways.
go.
Yeah.
For me, I'm gonna like reach into my bag here. For me, this week it was paper, and it has been recently. You know that for a long time I've loved my technology. I organize a
Yeah.
lot of things online. Since November, every time I open my phone, I have a cortisol spike. So
Yeah.
I have really
Oh,
it started with dot journaling. But
yes.
now I've developed a whole system for writing on paper again too, where I can switch things around. I have little printed
Wait, you need to make a video about this. Let me make you an influencer. This is needed. We need this. I wanna buy that. Influence me.
Well, we could talk about that. We could talk about that at some other time. But I'm obsessed with paper. There is something
Yes.
magical about the feeling of moving
Yeah.
a pen across a page and being able to like move pages around and just not
Yes.
be I feel more embodied
Yes.
when I am using my whole hand to write
I
than
call
when
it
I'm on the
coming
phone.
back to my senses. Like,
Yes.
literally, like, this what am I touching? What am I seeing with my eyes? It feels so simple that it couldn't possibly be profound, but it really is. Like, coming into your 5 senses and, like, can you put something pleasurable, like, at each one? It will
Yes.
change your whole nervous system.
Yup. Which is something I've learned from you.
Oh my god, well, I can't wait to copy that whole situation. I love it.
So to close out, we'll close out with homework, which of course is optional. We may be professors, but we are not actually going to give you homework.
Yeah.
But next week we will be talking about cabaret, right,
I
Kim? Is
can't
that correct?
wait. Yeah, yeah.
Which I'm obsessed with.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen Cabaret and you want to check it out, it's from the 1970s. It's incredible and iconic. Um, but if you're not able to check it out, come hang out with us.
Well,
Exactly, Eric. Yep. Come hang out with us next week anyway, because we'll recap and we'll sort of talk through the tools that you can get out of the movie,
yes,
even if you haven't seen it yet.
yes,
I don't
yeah.
know if I told you this, Kim, but I've started saying for Pop Smart Media, it's so dorky, but muse you can use. So like
Obsessed,
like
obsessed.
inspiration art that like becomes tools,
Yes.
which is so silly, but yeah. Um, yes, yeah.
Wow,
It's
yeah, it feels all the more relevant right now, right?
yes.
Yeah,
And since we've had a couple of movies about pleasure
yes,
using that to check in, I
yes,
think it's good to look at something where people check out,
yeah,
to not great ends. Yeah, Eric,
yeah.
there's so many chilling scenes in that movie.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. I'm so excited,
Spoiler about what
and
happens in Germany in the late 1930s. Yeah.
you did not hear it here first. Yeah, no, it's so good, and I feel like, really important, and I can't wait to talk to you about just, like, what you notice, especially as a film professor around, like, what, like, culture gets more and more popular as, like, fascism rises, because I feel like that is the shadow conversation around some of what we've been saying about, like, wow, all this trad wife shit and all this, like, feminism in the background, and it's like, right, that's what always happens, and I
Since
think
you've
that
said the phrase fascist aesthetics, I have not
yeah.
stopped thinking about it.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I mean, we could get all into the fashion of it. My beloved Coco, like, really does us dirty, and Hugo Boss making the Nazi uniforms. Like, it's really interesting to think about, like, both the literal and then the more, like, cultural phenomenon, the things that people feel just like, "Oh, I don't know why, I just, like this now," and it's like, "No, there is a reason." It's like that Devil Wears Prada scene, it's like, "You think you just chose that? Like, that was chosen for you, like, way up there," but
Yeah.
it's really, really true. So, I feel like we'll get like, that will be, like, such an interesting beginning to that conversation, and then we can keep talking about it probably for a long ass time, because it's so relevant.
Yeah. And Eric, yeah, I think watching the Schitt's Creek version of Cabaret is a good idea for her.
Let's do both. Okay, that's I sure got it. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everybody who joined
Yeah.
us. And I love you, Kim. And
Oh,
I'm so happy we're doing this. And I can't wait to talk about
so
Cabaret next week.
I love you. I love you all.
All
Yay.
right.
Bye.
Bye. If I can figure out how to end this. Oh, got it. All right. Bye.